Hey everyone, welcome to our small footprint. If you're new here, I'm Nyssa and I am a mum of 6. We live off-grid, homeschool in Australia, and we share lots of food and homesteading type content. So if you're interested, I'd love it if you would subscribe, and I will see you around if you're keen on sticking around. So today's video is a kitchen video. So I do these videos regularly, basically my whole day in the kitchen condensed and voiced over for you to watch and see what I got done. I didn't get anywhere near as much done today as I would have liked, but I did get a fair bit done. So we got lemon curd made. I made a big bulk pot of marinara sauce, which I didn't end up getting to put into jars, which will have to be done tomorrow. That I will put on the shelf, which is fine because it's getting down to -5 overnight, so it'll be below freezing temperatures that it will sit in, and then I'll warm it back up and can it tomorrow. I also made a huge batch of bolognese, so I make big batches of bolognese and then I freeze it in freezer bags in portions for the children, and that makes for a really easy dinner that they really enjoy when we need to. So I'm extending the bolognese these days, adding a jar of marinara to the bolognese mix. As the kids get bigger, they need a little bit more, so I add up the pasta, add the marinara as well. So I'm canning the marinara as well as putting the bolognese in the freezer, and then that way it will make good sized meals for them to share. So we had flatbreads a couple of times today. For Darryl and I had them for lunch, the kids had them for dinner, and I made my normal lemon basil pasta with the sourdough pasta because I rolled out my sourdough pasta as well. So come along and see what I got done in the kitchen today, and I will see you again tomorrow. I've been getting started a lot later in the morning than I'd like lately, more like 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, because I've had to get the day before's video finished or admin work or typing work or whatever done. But I had a whole lot of training to do for the Thermomix stuff and things like that, and so my days are a little bit skewed and I'm getting started later and finishing later, which isn't the greatest thing, but is the way it is at the moment. So the first meal of the day is normally lunch, basically 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning at the earliest. So I had made some sourdough flatbread dough last night and let it proof inside overnight so that we could eat it this morning, and that was what we had for lunch. So the dough is very basic. I'll try and remember with the ratios in the comments, but it's similar to my pizza dough, no sugar though for that, and a little bit less hydration, and I just mix it all up and stick it in the container and leave it inside at a distance from the fire all night, and then in the morning all we have to do is grab chunks of it off, roll it out, and we've got flatbreads for breakfast or lunch or whatever. We use these for like breakfast burritos at times, or to have meat on. We had some grilled chicken and mayo and stuff on them for lunch today. They're very versatile. They're just a plain sort of a naan style flatbread, quite a thick one. If you roll them out thinner, you can get them in a tortilla, I suppose, but the dough does tend to break rather than stretch. It's not particularly high fat dough, but they're tasty regardless, and we use them a lot as a fallback for food because this container can go in the fridge now. Whatever we use out of it we use, and whatever's left can go in the fridge and can be used later today or tomorrow or whenever. After that, one of the next things I did was make some lemon curd or lemon butter, interchangeable terms as far as I'm aware. I had a friend who gave me a bag of lemons. They're really nice lemons too, very juicy, so I'm going to be able to get a lot out of these. And I decided that I wanted to try the Thicken Mode on the Thermomix. It's this new function that I hadn't tried before, and basically anything that you make to a thickened sauce, like a custard or a curd or a gravy or a hollandaise or whatever, you throw all the ingredients in and you just hit thicken, and the sensors in the blades sense the viscosity of the liquid and the temperature, and they alter that as needed to make it hit the right way, which I thought was a really neat concept and haven't tried before. So I turned my sugar into icing sugar first. So I just put my raw sugar in the bowl and ground that up into icing sugar so that it would dissolve easier into the curd and you wouldn't end up with any chunks of sugar crystals. Once I did that, I threw everything into the bowl, basically. So I did this dairy-free because we don't do butter, so I used coconut oil as my fat, and then the eggs, coconut oil, sugar. That's all you really need in a lemon curd lemon butter. I'm having a mind blank on if there was anything else, but you throw all the ingredients in and you just hit the thicken button. So I pushed that and let it go, and it came out beautifully. It was perfect texture, perfect to put in jars in the fridge, and I'm going to make maybe a cake tomorrow with it, maybe some tarts, I'm not sure, but I have plenty of lemons too, so I'm going to do some more lemon cordial as well, and maybe I'll do some more of the lemon curd. Can't shelf stable lemon curd. Well, you can, but not very efficiently, and it doesn't last for very long, so I'd prefer to just make it as needed. So if I have excess lemons, I'll probably just freeze the lemon juice, and then that way I can make it again when I want to make it another time. So once that was done, I decided that I really needed to use some of this mince. So the first thing I'm going to do with it is I'm going to make a big batch of bolognese. I'm probably going to freeze a whole one of the mince bags as is in the freezer, because I'll use a whole bag in a batch of bolognese. So that means that I've got a whole bag in the freezer to make another bulk batch of bolognese when I'm ready. Now, the kids are getting bigger, and as they get bigger, they eat more. So the way that I help reduce costs on that is that I use pearl barley in my bolognese to bump the meat ratio of it, like the meat texture ratio of it. But I've also started adding a jar of like a pasta sauce in it as well. So the pearl barley, when it's frozen and then when you reheat it, the bolognese ends up quite thick because it soaks up all that extra liquid. So we need a little bit more liquid, but we just need a little bit more in general. I've bumped up the amount of pasta that we use, and I bump up the sauce a little bit. So instead of making the freezer sizes of the bolognese larger, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a marinara sauce at the same time, and I'm going to can that all up, and then you can grab a bolognese out of the freezer and a jar of marinara off the shelf and mix them together, and you've extended the bolognese that little bit more, and it should be enough for the kids that way. So I'm going to do both of those at the same time because I may as well. So I've got 2 big pots out. What I need to do first is dice up all the vegetables. Now, I just use the Thermomix because I like them nice and fine, so any sort of food processor works. I use my Thermomix because I don't have another food processor, and I like the way it works. So I diced up all my veggies first. So I did a whole lot of carrots and diced them up and put them in a bowl. I did a bunch of celery and did the same, just whizzed it through 5 seconds, speed 5 sort of thing, and then put it in a bowl and put it aside. I also did some onion, and I did some zucchini. I had some really sad looking zucchini in the fridge, so I cut off any bad bits of them and whizzed them up as well. I do have some zucchini in the freezer, but these needed using, so I used these anyway. So I diced them all up, put them all aside so that I could have them ready to go. Now, the marinara for canning, it's supposed to be a water bath recipe, and because of that you're supposed to have strict ratios of how much tomato product versus how much low acid product, like your onions and things like that. So I started off measuring out all the low acid products, doing them by the cupful and things like that, so I could have the ratios correct, and added that to the pot to come up to a boil for a while. I added 4 of the really giant tins of tomato and some garlic and some bay leaves as well. I decided after that point that I wasn't completely happy with the flavour of it, so I decided I'm just going to pressure can it. So I added some more onion and some other seasonings that I like my Worcestershire sauce and things like that, things that could potentially alter the pH level of it and make it unsafe for water bath canning. So instead of water bath canning it, I'm just going to pressure can it, which is fine because it's going to be a cooked sauce. It doesn't need to be that fresh tasting sauce anyway. So I ended up adding what I wanted to add to it to get the flavour right for our tastes. The bolognese then was whatever was left over of all the veggies, and so I used onion, carrot, celery and zucchini and fried it off. I actually diced up some more onion because I wanted a bit more onion in there, and I added garlic to it, and then I add bacon to mine as well. So I put 1 kilo of bacon into the Thermomix, and I minced that up as well, and I add that to the vegetables and cook it off. I just really like the flavour that it brings through the bolognese. So I added the diced bacon to it as well. And then with both pots going, I just stirred them both as needed. So we wanted to get the marinara sauce to simmer for a couple of hours so all the flavours could, you know, permeate everything. And then the bolognese, we're getting it cooked to a point where it's can be frozen. So once all the vegetables were cooked off, I added the mince. Now I break it up and cook it off a little bit. I keep on seeing these tool mentioned. It's on Amazon, that's for breaking up minced beef in the bottom of pots, and I keep on thinking I should buy one because it's really hard work breaking it up in the bottom of a large pot with a spoon, but we managed. So I broke it all up and cooked that off a little bit as well, so that if you don't break it up and cook it off before you add the liquid, you end up with great big chunks of beef in it. And because we're freezing this, I wanted it fairly uniform texture. I added a jar of the mushroom stock that I had made the other day to it, and a jar of chicken stock, and then I added some passata, and then I filled those passata bottles with water to shake them and get rid of any extra passata in there, and added that as well. A big jar of tomato paste, and then some tinned tomatoes as well. Now, because I add pearl barley to this, it needs to have more liquid. So normally I would add more stock, but I didn't make any stock, and I didn't want to crack too many jars off the shelf because I only have a few on there. But I did have some tomato juice on the shelf that I had bought to make baked beans, to can baked beans with, and I haven't done it yet. And I thought that that would work really well to add that liquid but also keep the flavour profile. So I added 2 litres of tomato juice to the bolognese to bring up that liquid level. And then added the barley to the bolognese so that... no, I have to bring it up to a simmer first. So I added the tomato juice and then let it go to come up to a simmer. So I walked away from that for the moment. Then while that was coming up to a simmer, I rolled out my pasta that I had made the other day. So it's been sitting in the fridge. I hadn't got to it yet. So you can only leave it sitting in the fridge for a couple of days because it's got raw egg in it. And then you need to roll it out. So what I did was the normal. I have a video of how I make this completely somewhere. I'll try and find the link to it. I roll out the pasta using the adapter on my KitchenAid, and I go from 8 all the way down to 1. And I get it as thin as possible, and then I cut it. I bought a new little tool. If you saw my my shopping video, my grocery haul video this month, I bought a new little tool that had multiple blades in it that I thought would be nice for cutting out the pasta in a couple of sweeps rather than singly, but it cuts them really, really thin. So I did a couple of them, but it was very thin, very fiddly, and probably thinner than we like to eat anyway. So I did a little bit like that and then decided it just wasn't worthwhile and went back to my normal way, which is just using the cutter and cutting each strip. They always end up uneven and some end up quite thick, but the way we eat it, we don't mind that. It's such a nice pasta, the sourdough pasta. It's really soft and has this great silky mouthfeel that it doesn't matter that it's a little bit thick. Sometimes if your pasta's a bit thick but it's, dried, and when you cook it, it ends up having that chewy factor. It's not so nice. But with the sourdough pasta, it's really quite irrelevant because it's just so soft to eat. So I added the barley to the bolognese once it had come up to a simmer, or sort of a boil, because you want it at a really high heat before you add that barley in so that it is cooking, and then the temperature will drop as soon as you add the barley in, of course. Stirring it all the while to make sure that everything was working, and making sure to keep coming back and stirring, because the barley and the mince will drop to the bottom while you're heating it, especially in a large pot. So you want to rotate that meat and stuff further up to the top and get that liquid down the bottom, otherwise it'll burn. You'll have stuff burning to the bottom. So I stir it and I cook it until the barley doesn't have that hard kernel in the middle, basically. So I cook it until when you eat it, you don't feel any different texture between the barley and the beef, and then it's done. For dinner, I still had both pots on the stove, so I needed something easy. So I grabbed the flatbread dough out of the fridge that was left over and rolled out a dozen of them for the kids. While I rolled them out, I grabbed a jar of pork off the shelf. So this is the pulled pork that I canned the other day. I don't think it's from that batch. I think it's from the batch before, but same general principle. So it was just raw packed pork in a jar, and I cracked that open, drained the excess liquid off, and then fried the pork off, breaking it up into pulled pork pieces as I went. And then I put it all in a bowl for the kids to have with their flatbread. So they had that and coleslaw and mayo, and they had some brownie for dessert, I think, as well. And so that was dinner for them. For us, because I had made the sourdough pasta, I made the lemon pesto pasta dish that I make regularly. Some of the kids like this, but the majority of them don't. So I don't generally make this in sizes enough to share with them. If I make enough, a couple of the kids will eat the leftovers, but generally speaking, they're not huge fans. I have a short, I think, that shows exactly how I make all of this, but I wanted to show the pretty coloured eggs too. We got 3 different pretty coloured eggs to use today. So it's just 3 yolks, half a lemon squeezed, some pesto, olive oil, salt. And then you mix it all up, whisk it all up. You can add Parmesan cheese if you want to, but we don't use Parmesan. If I want some, I'll sprinkle it on top, but Darryl doesn't eat it, so I don't use it in the cooking. And then once you've got it all whisked up, you boil your pasta till it's cooked. And you add your pasta to the egg mix hot. You make sure not to drain your pasta because you want some of that pasta water as well. So you pull the pasta up out of the pot into the egg mix and you mix it through. And as you mix the pasta through the egg mix, it cooks the eggs off and turns into this lovely creamy sauce. So really simple dish, but really tasty. Once it's at the point you like, if it thickens up too much, you can add a bit more pasta water to loosen the pasta up. And then we just served it with some marinated chicken that I had that needed to be used. I just warmed it up on the stove and then served it over the top of the pasta. So that was today. I didn't get anywhere near as much done as I would have liked, but I have tomorrow as well to get stuff done before having to get back doing some typing and admin work Monday morning, and then we will see how we go. It's been a bit of a busy couple of weeks and I've been struggling to get as much done in the kitchen as I normally would. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again next time.